Good morning, everybody. I am Debbie Rosen. I think everybody should be coming in. Here we go. We have a bunch of participants. Welcome. If you can hear me, you can go ahead and type a message in the chat as we always do. I also put a link to the handouts in the chat. So if you didn't get that link in the email, hi, Jen, how are you? I see Veronica's on too. These are all my daughter dances, Dr. Zucker.
That's great.
Thank you, Deborah. And I see Veronica, yes, and Jen, those are my people from dance, my mom people. And we're really excited that you're here. And we have about 550 people that registered. I'm sure only half of those will show up as typical, but we're very happy that the people are here and the technology is working. So I consider it already a great day. I'm sure you do too, right?
Yep.
Oh, good afternoon from the UK. Yes. Hello, Charles. How are you? I know there's others from the UK as well because I emailed with some who were concerned about the time because, of course, I was learning that in Eventbrite, the time shows up as your local time, which is helpful for you. But then when I emailed everybody, said, oh, this is going to be at 9 o'clock, and I think it confused a few people. So I appreciate that. Claire, you're here from the UK, and oh, Carolyn from Scotland. This is very exciting. I'm so happy that everybody's here. We are going to start right on time because we have so much to cover. And good morning, of course, to Dr. Zucker, who is here, and we're very excited is here. We have so much to cover, so we're going to go ahead and start exactly on time, but most people just start really rolling in. Yes, Charles, I saw that you were logged in. I get these messages, and I woke up this morning at 4:45 a.m. and I saw all these users had registered. So I was going to start emailing people, but I figured that you guys would figure that out, hopefully, and I'm so glad that you're here. And oh, Dee from Sussex, UK. That's a tongue twister. And we're very excited that you're here. I'm sure there's a lot of people from the US as well. I'm curious from the people from the UK and Scotland how you found out about this webinar. I'm glad that you did, but I'm just curious. Oh, hi, Ricky. So a lot of people from the UK. I know that we sent only 2 emails to get the 550 people, so it must have been spread around. And so I guess that means, Dr. Zucker, you're an annual presenter, whether you want to be or not.
No problem. I'd be thrilled to.
Not to put you on the spot, of course, but
I would love to.
We do ask people to come back, so we're really excited that everybody's here. And I'm going to go ahead and just repost the link for the handout. It's not like a required, but it would be helpful if you want it. I think it was helpful for me to, oh, it's advertised in the newsletter. My daughter signed up for a mass webinar at Cayman event. Oh, good. Great. That's great. I'm so happy to hear that. So, oh yeah, it was advertised from Eventbrite. Well, thank you, Eventbrite. So as I said, we're going to start at 9 o'clock. And so that's just 1 minute. Good afternoon. Gosh, boy, Dr. Zucker, we have a lot of people here from overseas, so we're excited. And we have to commend you. We have to commend you because you guys are the early birds signing on at a few minutes before 9, where all the people in the U.S. are just,
right,
or most of the people in the U.S. are waiting right till 9 o'clock.
Right.
Hi, Rachel. That's awesome. Fantastic. We're so glad that you're here. And as you'll hear in a minute, we do have these monthly. I think we have the best of the best speakers, as you'll find out today. And I know last month we had a power panel, and you can see that on our website, which Lindsay, maybe you can put up. Hi, Vince, how are you? I'm so glad to be surrounded by all my friends here today. So as promised, I know even though people are logging in, we're going to go ahead and start. So if you want to go to the next slide, for those of you who are not familiar with the Study Pro, of course you are here for the best of CBT tips and tricks, but go ahead to the next one. for those of you who are not familiar with the Study Pro, we are an executive function and study skills center, and most people know what executive functions are, but those are the set of mental processes that help us to achieve our goals, both the emotional side, emotional regulation side, as well as, of course, the organization and initiation and inhibition side. And, we know through COVID and through everything else that we've experienced, especially through COVID, that these are developmental and they're definitely needed for school. And a lot of times when these skills are underdeveloped, which is kind of a theme that we're going to be talking about today with Dr. Zucker, we need strategies to be able to develop them. So if you want to go to the next slide. Hi, Elaine from Scotland. So we take a very solutions-oriented approach in helping students in multiple ways in terms of coaching, as well as actually support, we call it at the point of performance, which is really what our homework center is about, so that if students are struggling possibly with homework and they have those underdeveloped skills, we actually can provide that scaffolding and that structure to make it a lot easier for them to initiate, to inhibit other things, which translates to not being on the phone or other technology with friends, etc. So these are all the things that we do, and our contact information if you'd like us. We also, of course, have these monthly webinars. These are two things that we're doing coming forward. We're very excited to be having this book talk that actually Dr. Zucker is going to be referring to some of the books or two of the books that Dr. Bill Stickstrid and Ned Johnson wrote. After this webinar today, I'll be sending out probably early next week an invitation for this next webinar on Friday, 12/10. And then if you are not overseas, then you can consider our growth mindset workshop. We do free growth mindset workshops 3 times in the fall and 3 times now in 2022. And so this particular one is on Saturday, 12/4, and it's about growth mindset for writing. So actually that email just went out this morning, so you might have received that if you're local. So with, I think that we have, I guess, just one piece of housekeeping if you wanted to move forward, which is, again, this is going to be recorded. The link was sent out here. That is to the handout if you'd like to view that or download that. And it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Bonnie Zucker, who is a psychologist in Rockville and director of the group practice, Bonnie Zucker and Associates, and she's also an author of many books, one of which was a very important book for me as I was raising my eldest son. And I will also just say before I transition, Dr. Zucker, as you know, I saw you speak before, and I have been hopefully pleasantly pursuing you for 3 years. So I'm so excited that you're here, and
Thank you.
You're obviously in great demand. And I'm going to go ahead and mute and turn it over to you.
Okay.
I'll only say that because of the amount of information that Dr. Zucker does want to share, we unfortunately are not going to be taking questions. I think we won't have time, but I will turn it over to you now, and I think you're going to all enjoy what you have to say and a lot of great information.
Thank you so much. And you are a model of grit, because it was a very busy couple of years and you were so persistent, and I so am grateful because I'm really excited to be here, and what a special opportunity, including over Zoom, and what a wide net we can cast, So, okay, we're going to get started. And I was a little overzealous and made a lot of slides, and just wanted to give as many tips and strategies and techniques and in this talk, and really hope that you can leave this talk with a bunch of ideas. So in that vein, that's why I made a lot of slides. So I'll just spend 1 or 2 giving you some statistics about anxiety disorders. So anxiety disorders are the most common form of psychopathology in children, adolescents, and adults. An estimated 15 to 20% of children ages 6 through 17 meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder. And when you look more specifically at adolescents, it's 32% of kids aged 13 to 18 will meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder at some point during their adolescence. And then 31% of United States adults have an anxiety disorder at some point in their lifetime. Now, given that anxiety is an internalizing condition and we can't always see it when we look at someone, and given that so many people don't recognize their anxiety as anxiety, believe it or not, these are probably underestimates, which is just even more stunning to me. But it really illustrates just how much we're dealing with anxiety. And even those who don't meet the criteria are experiencing a lot of stress and stress conditions. And as we know, a lot of ER visits are people who have unexplained abdominal distress, and quite often that's from stress and anxiety. The good news is anxiety is very treatable. No matter what your therapist's orientation is, even if they're more of a dynamic therapist, we definitely want the cognitive behavioral skills to be implemented in the treatment because the findings are very robust for CBT. It's the most empirically supported approach to treating anxiety in both children and adults. It's problem focused, solution oriented. It's all about coping, teaching coping skills and coming up with behavioral exposures, all of which we're going to get into. And the same strategies are equally as helpful for stress management and even transient stress, which if you didn't have transient stress before the last year and a half, I imagine that you have now. So hopefully you'll even learn some of these own strategies for dealing with stress in your life. So CBT sees anxiety as having three parts: the body, which is the physiological manifestations, the thoughts, which are all the cognitive symptoms, and then behavior, what we see, what we do. So when I meet with someone, whether they're a child or an adult, I actually do draw out a handout that says anxiety, three parts, and I write body, thoughts, behavior, and then I go through some specific examples of what their body expresses when they're anxious, when they're stressed. So you get sweaty palms, fast heartbeat, tense muscles, stomach aches, sometimes restlessness, difficulty sleeping. And then for thoughts, we of course have worries, all those what if thoughts, which is actually a catastrophizing thinking error. So you have the worries, all the bad things that can happen, and then you make thinking errors, which hopefully I gave you the cognitive distortions handout, which is the thinking errors. We'll go through a few of those. And by the way, we're going to go through this all in detail. So this is an overview. And then negative self-talk, things like I can't handle it, I'm too scared, I don't want to go, you have to stay with me. All of those things that kids and adults say to themselves when they're anxious. And then avoidance, if I'm afraid, I'm going to try to avoid it. And then so many nervous behaviors, right? So kids ask for reassurance. I have a girl working with right now who keeps wanting to check the weather app because she's afraid of wind and saw some trees go down when we had some storms over the summer. So she has all these nervous behaviors where she says, do you think it's going to rain today? Do you think it's going to wind? And then they have a lot of wind, and then they have an Alexa, and she keeps asking the Alexa, what's the weather for today? What's the weather for tomorrow? And Alexa's great, except that these nervous behaviors actually make anxiety worse. So to help a child with anxiety, we want to work with all three parts. We want to learn relaxation and calm breathing. One thing I'll say that I think has been a silver lining of the pandemic is that mental health has become such a focus for so many people and also for so many schools. Schools are now starting to see mental health as a prerequisite to learning, which I think is fantastic. I've received calls from people saying, you know, we want to bring our child to just have like a checkup appointment with you because we're starting to view mental health as we do physical health. So for my end, I think this is fantastic because I've always thought schools should teach a class on feelings and on emotional regulation, in addition to math and science and English. But so often it relies on, falls on the parents. So whatever you can bring into your child's life in terms of a routine around relaxation, guided imagery, meditation, yoga, we are so lucky to have YouTube yoga videos, to have all of these amazing apps. I'm going to recommend some apps, including free apps that anyone can get, and you can just do 10 minutes a night and it makes a world of difference. And then for thoughts, there are specific strategies, so, for example, loop recordings, which we'll go through to help conquer worries, and then identifying and replacing thinking errors, and then changing that negative self-talk to positive self-talk. Things like, I must face my fears to overcome them. Once I'm in this situation long enough, I'll be okay. I'm scared and I'm safe. I'm uncomfortable and I can handle it. All of those are in a future slide. And then, of course, we face our fears. I use ladders. So actual ladders on poster board with Mr. Smelly markers, a list of everything that the child is afraid of, ranked from easiest to hardest. We'll go through that. And then we get rid of the nervous behaviors. And this is really where parents come in, because if I'm the parent who's answering the questions about the weather, or I'm having an Alexa that can answer the weather, or giving my cell phone to look at the weather in a child who's 9, I'm actually supporting the anxiety, even though that's not my intention. My intention is to help my child. So we do parent work around that. Okay, so we're going to talk about calm breathing. And for this, I'm actually going to get on the floor, and you're going to see, hopefully not the messy part of my office. But I am going to show you, because it's something I would do if we were in person, how I teach calm breathing. All right. That's not perfect. Hold on. Okay, that's good. So this is the shallow end, right? And this is the deep end. And what we want is, we want the block to stay still and the breath to come down here. So if I'm anxious, the block will move and go like this. I think it's going to rain later. What if a tree falls down? You see the block is going up and down because I'm breathing into my upper chest. I'm breathing into the shallow end. But if I'm relaxed, my block will stay still and my breath will come down here. You breathe in through your nose. I always joke around that this is the best part of the talk. But when you teach kids a lot, they do this. They go, oh, am I doing it? Is my stomach coming out? And of course, that's not how we want the breath to go. We want the breath to naturally come up into the stomach. Very, very slow. Okay, so that's calm breathing. One child I worked with said, oh, I learned this, but they put the block on my stomach. And I had to make the block go up and down. And I said, that's okay, except the problem is you can breathe into your chest and then breathe into your stomach and make your stomach rise. And we actually want the chest to be like, we want to bypass the chest in our breath. And it comes out, goes very slowly in, and then comes out to our stomachs, and then comes back in. So that's lower diaphragmatic breathing. Then one nostril breathing, which is my favorite for people who have trouble with test anxiety, who are in the car going somewhere and they're anxious on planes, even though flying is so safe. So what we do is we close one nostril and we close the mouth and we breathe in and out through only one nostril. And if you're able to, I'd love for you to do this with me on the other side of your screen, so on the other side of my screen. So we're going to breathe in. We're going to do it. I say kind of 10 in and out. I actually usually like to let my out breath a little longer, but let's do 7 in and 10 out just to practice. So we close the mouth, we close the nostril, and we'll breathe in for 7. So in for 7, out for 10 again. This time, let's do in for 10 and out for 10. And I do teach kids first to exhale. I forgot to mention that. I say, pretend you're a balloon and you're deflating like this. Okay, then we'll do in for 10, out for 10. So with practice, you can become really good at this. And for the kid, and we want kids to master this when they're calm first. So you can't just do the one nostril breathing when you're in the middle of having test anxiety. You actually have to master it when you're calm. So I usually say first thing in the morning, right before bed, do about 5 minutes of one nostril breathing. You'll notice your body becomes so much calmer. You can be subtle about it. So if this was my desk, and I was doing work, I could go like this. Count in my head kind of thing. So it's extremely effective, and I would encourage you to practice. Okay, the apps I was mentioning, I'm just going to show you my favorite app in the whole wide world. It's called Insight Timer. And okay, so it is this gold bowl with the white background, and it's free. And there are many, many amazing tracks. And I'm just going to play you one little sample of Be Calm for a Little Longer by Tom Evans. It's listed there just so you can hear it, hear his voice. And the goal is to find a voice you love and then repeat that track, because then it will become associated with a relaxed state. My kids love this Tom Evans. They call him
From the moment we awake
Honey Evans
till when we fall asleep, our minds start chattering. And as we get into our day, we become busy. And even in the quiet moments, our minds are active. Now, if you want to have a really good day, the best way to do it is to take 10 or 20 minutes out every day of me time to allow your mind to go quiet.
So especially when my kids were younger, I have an 8 and a 13-year-old. When they were younger, they would say, "Can you play Honey Evans?" Because his voice sounds like honey. And they know his name is Tom Evans, but it was just like this very sweet experience for them. And literally I would fall asleep too. I could fall asleep at any time, but like I would listen too. And like in 2 minutes, we're all asleep. And given the number of kids and adults, right, who can't fall asleep because we've got so much on our minds, having something there. And I do often recommend that you dim the phone, because we don't want to look at the phone right before bed, and then we remove it from the room as soon as it's finished. But again, it's really making it a habit, making the time. I've included Calm. The Calm app is great, and Headspace. Both of those have a free component and then a component that you can pay for. Oh, and by the way, for sleep as well, Calm has sleep stories, and it's like the butterfly sanctuary. One day, a butterfly, and you're like asleep because it's so monotone and relaxing. And really, again, it's finding what works for your child, what they gravitate toward. Okay, so that's it on body. Now we're moving to thoughts. Our big goal is to have resilience and resilient thinking. So resilience is helping kids know that they can handle whatever comes their way. Every single problem has a solution. No matter what they have to deal with, they can handle it. It's very important that kids get this language in their head. It really helps prevent, and we could have a whole other talk on internal locus of control. And by the way, Bill Stixrud's book, Bill Stixrud and Ned Johnson, if you can go to that talk, I would. They just came to a group I lead, and we could not get enough of it. I mean, I walked away. I took my own notes, and I've read both of their books, and still had learned so much. But they do talk a lot about internal locus of control, which is actually like my biggest thing when treating anxiety, which is what can you do to change the situation? What can you do to change your experience of the situation? It's very protective. It's protective against depression. It's protective against social issues. And where you feel like I can't change the social situation. Okay, well, what can you do? Because there's a lot. So one way to help is like to think, what's the worst thing that can happen, and could I handle it? And the answer is yes, you can handle anything. Really helping kids embody that. So the Thinking Errors handout, I'll just highlight a few. All or nothing thinking is super common. I share this story often. I think it's a nice story to share because it shows that we all do make thinking errors, and oftentimes we're the model for our child. And when my oldest son was 4, he went and got a haircut, and they gave him a lollipop. And I said, "Oh, Isaac, you can't eat that lollipop. Now you have to wait till you get home." And he said, because your first child, you're very careful with lollipops in the car. And then once you have a second kid, you're like, "Here's a lollipop." But he said, "Well, I don't want it if I can't have it now." And I said, "Why wouldn't you want it? We're going to be home in 10 minutes. Then you can enjoy it there." And he's like, "If I can't have it now, I don't want it." I said, "Oh, honey, this is all or nothing thinking. It's either exactly as you want it or you don't want it at all. The flexible way of thinking is, oh, I want my lollipop. I'll have to wait a little bit." So on the way home, we stopped at the bank and we were in the drive-through. It was winter, it was very cold. And I was putting money in one account, taking money out of a different account, and the person messed it up and they put it in and out of the same account. And in between, when I'm waiting for them to fix the error, I roll my window up and I say to Isaac, "This is the worst bank. I'm never coming to this bank again." And smart little Isaac says to me, "What's it called again, Mommy? All or what?" And I literally modeled all or nothing thinking 2 minutes after I had explained it to him. And that kind of thinking really makes it hard for kids to feel like they can be flexible and adaptive. And perfectionists are all or nothing thinkers. If they get a 99 or 100 or 102 on their grade, it's great. If it's a 93, it's not the kind of A I want. So all or nothing thinking puts things in categories that make it very hard to be flexible and feel okay. And catastrophizing is what if? What if a tree falls on my house? What if something bad happens to my parents? What if I get a C? Excuse me. It's very common, the what if thinking. And we want kids to say, "Oh, there I go again, catastrophizing." And there are other thinking errors. So kids with social anxiety do a lot of mind reading, where they think they know what others are thinking about them. It's usually negative. And then they'll do personalization, where they make things about them when they're really not about them at all. So like they might suggest a movie to watch. The movie's not that great. And after they think, "Oh, my friends probably think I'm, a terrible person for picking such a stupid movie or something." They make it about them when it's not. Oh, sorry, one thing. The goal is to familiarize yourself with the thinking errors list, and then pick out the ones that you realize you make and look to see your patterns and then challenge it. So what would someone who wasn't catastrophizing, what would someone without anxiety think in this situation? What would someone who didn't have social anxiety think? What's another way of looking at this situation? What's the flexible way of looking at it? And then one thing to know about CBT is, what you often hear is an automatic thought. So, what if someone comes in and hurts us? That's an automatic thought. But beneath that is a belief system that's reflective of a schema. A schema is like a mold or a template that you use to take in information and understand the world. So you basically want to help identify what the core beliefs are. And when we fix this, we actually fix the behavior. So behavior change happens first, and then cognitive change happens. So if I'm treating a child who's afraid of a dog, I'm going to get them to pet the dog, which is a behavior change, because traditionally they would avoid touching a dog. So they make the behavior change, and on the 20th time of petting the dog, the thought of "this dog could bite me" starts to go away. So first we make the change with the behavior, then we see the thoughts change. So an example of the schemas, you have these core beliefs which come from the schema, and it's about you, others, and the world. So if I have general anxiety and I think someone can break in and hurt us, or there's a lot of killings around, lots of gun violence and stabbings. So when you pay attention to all of those scary things, which is another thinking error called selective attention. So you have a belief that the world is threatening, and then you read the news. Well, that's going to confirm all your beliefs. Whereas if you look out your window, no one's getting, hopefully, no one's getting shot or stabbed on the street. But on the news, it's a selected, you're just attending to information that confirms your beliefs. So we have to take news breaks. But the core belief about yourself is I am vulnerable, I'm at risk. Other people, there are many bad people out there. Other people are out to get you. And the world, The world is a threatening place. It's a dangerous place. So we look to challenge those schemas and challenge the automatic thoughts that come from them. So one big successful strategy, I used to reserve this for just therapy, and then I started teaching it to parents and teaching it and realized that everyone can actually do this. So we make these worry loop recordings, and it sounds like the worst recommendation you've ever heard of. And I always think if I was a client and I went into a therapist's office and she said, well, hey, we're going to write down all of your worries and then we're going to make a recording of them and you're going to listen to them every day for 10 to 20 minutes. Probably would circle right out of there. But the thing is that it's capitalizing on the biology of the brain. So the brain is designed from back to our cavewomen days, where we were rewarded with literally dopamine release from discovering new lands where there could be new food sources. So our brains actually become bored by information that we already know. So information that's repeated over and over and over. Like if you see a commercial you've seen a million times, it's really hard to focus. Or occasionally, I haven't flown in a while, but like I used to try really hard to pay attention to the flight attendant safety demonstration, and I would never make it past like, you insert the buckle into the metal loop, and it was like I just focused on my book or something next to me, my children, because my brain was like, you already know that. There's no reason to pay attention to it. So these alarming worry thoughts that we have throughout the day actually grab our attention. And when you put them all in a recording and you listen to it for an extended period of time, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's twice a day for 20 minutes, depending on the severity of the anxiety. What happens is your brain gets a chance to become bored. And a lot of people say, why would I do this? I'm having these anxious thoughts anyway. And I explain to them that when it is put into a worry loop recording and you listen to it all at the same time, that's when your brain has the chance to actually habituate. And habituation, by the way, is becoming bored or numbed out or used to a situation. When explaining to children, I say, like, imagine you jump into a freezing cold swimming pool. At first, it's so cold, you can't even breathe. And then, you stay in there for 10 minutes and it's like 20 minutes later, it's kind of warm in here. And, by 30 minutes, you're super relaxed. It's warm. You're having fun. You don't even realize it's cold. Anybody new to the pool would think it's freezing, but you've habituated. You've become used to it. So the other thing that happens with a loop recording versus it's in my head is you externalize the worries. You're taking them from your head, putting them outside of you in your voice on a recording. The other thing, and these are the instructions for it. The other thing I do with a worry loop is, and I'll go back to that slide, is I take the worries and then I convert them. I literally copy and paste the child's worry, what if, copy and paste it, and then I change that second paragraph into uncertainty training. And we're going to go through an example. So it is always possible that. So you go from, what if someone breaks in? What if I get killed? What if someone hurts me? And the next paragraph is, it is always possible someone breaks in. It is always possible I will get killed. It's possible someone will hurt me. So you have one long recording with actually both the worries and the uncertainty training. So you start with listing all the worries. I type them all out. And then they make a recording, and I encourage them to put even the scariest, most horrible thoughts that they have. And I explain, if you think it should be on the recording. And it's like 10 to 20 minutes. It usually takes 2 to 3 weeks. Quite often we modify the loop recording as we go because we realize that new worries come up. A bunch of new worries come up from the worries that we listed, or they never remembered the worries that were really upsetting to them. And we just make either an additional or another recording. So example, if it's a 2-minute long recording, I'll usually say, listen to it 6 times. If it's a 90-second recording, I'd say listen to it 5 times. And I will often tell them to expect it to take 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes it's longer. You can use voice memos on an iPhone. For some people, they have been very sensitive about their worries being on a phone, particularly if it's like backed up to the cloud. And so they get an Olympus recorder off of, I say Amazon, anywhere, $25. And then that recorder becomes something that they can use exclusively for their worry loops. Okay, so I'm going to play you, and it's in my voice, just so you can hear what it sounds like. This is someone who had a balloon phobia, which is actually quite an obstacle. There are balloons all over the place, even in the bank. Okay, so here it is. It's my voice to protect the client. What if there are balloons at the party? What if there are lots of balloons? What if the balloons pop? What if one of the balloons pops right near me and I get scared and start crying and my friends laugh at me? And then I'm so embarrassed and there's nobody there to take me home. And then what if more balloons pop and I get so scared that I have to run out of the party and everybody laughs at me and points at me? What if I ask them to move some of the balloons away if like they're at the table where we're eating? Parents say, no, the balloons are there for decoration. It is always possible a balloon will pop near me. It's always possible I'll get scared. It's always possible that the other kids will laugh at me. It's always possible that the balloons on the table won't be moved. So you can hear that we went from the first version to the second, right? So the what if a balloon pops? It's always possible a balloon will pop. Okay, and also with kids, you know, I really explain to them and actually make a handout called Situation, Thoughts, Feelings, Actions. And it's, here are my situation, you know, my parents are going out, or, oh, I have a test. And the automatic thought is, you know, what if I freeze? What if I don't remember anything? And then the feeling is, you know, I'm really panicking. And then the action would be, I try not to take the test. And the replacement thoughts are, you know, I will be fine. Once I'm very prepared for the test. Once I'm there, I'll be okay. If I really freeze, I will solve that problem by talking to the teacher and explaining them I'm panicking. You know, oftentimes we collaborate with schools because we want teachers to say, do not worry. If you can't do this now, you'll do it later. Like when we lower the stakes, it actually makes it much easier to challenge the anxiety. But we want them to have thoughts that kids without anxiety would have. So often I ask kids who are anxious, you know, what would someone without anxiety think? And they say, oh, well, they wouldn't have any of these thoughts. You know, they would just go to the party. I mean, it's amazing how much they know, how accurate they are and self-aware. All right, so here are some of the examples of the self-talk cards. I actually make cards, like note cards, and I have a bunch of them and Sharpies, and I've been snail mailing them to people. But what I do is I have a bunch of cards for them, and then they pick out their favorite, maybe 3, and memorize them. So I must face my fears to overcome them. I can change the way I think to change the way I feel. I can handle whatever comes my way. Anxiety is not an accurate predictor of what's to come. Anxiety is just an unpleasant feeling. What would someone who is not scared in the situation think? What would they do? These are a little bit more like 13, 12 and up. I cannot allow anxiety to make decisions for me. I cannot allow anxiety to influence my behavior. I've never regretted facing my fears. I have to sit with and tolerate this discomfort. So, okay, so now we're going to move into behavior. So like I said, the most common form of behavior with anxiety is avoidance. And the other ones I've mentioned: reassurance, seeking, fidgeting, picking and pulling, checking, scanning the environment, asking a million questions, clinging, rituals, all these kinds of things are part of it. So you have to face your fears to overcome them. It is habituation, not only to the thoughts and the worry tape, but to the actual behaviors and staying in the situation long enough. Okay, so let me just show you a ladder. So this is somebody who had separation anxiety and was very worried about not being able to reach her parents when they were out. So the first thing was no checking mom's battery level and weather. So before her mom would go out, she would make sure her cell phone was fully charged to 100% in case she needed to reach her. And she would check the weather to make sure that it was safe for her mom to go out. I joked around that my battery's like always low, that I could use her over at my house. I was just kidding. Go on a play date. You can text and you can call your parents. And eventually we then did a play date without that. Go somewhere without an advance visit. So a lot of times she would want to swing by the place she was going to first before actually going. use an airplane bathroom and a public bathroom on your own. She would have her mom come with her and stand outside of the door. Parents go out, you have a friend over and a new sitter. She was 12 when we worked together, and they had a neighborhood girl who was 15 who was like technically her sitter so she wouldn't be alone. But then she had a friend over too, and she felt like that was too much change and made her nervous. Go to a new camp and take class without a friend. Stay at your grandparents' house. Your parents go out, you have a new sitter. You go on a sleepover, a less familiar friend's house. You go on a sleepover, and then at your house, your parents go out and they go out kind of far, like 30 minutes away. Go on a sleepover, parents stay at a hotel over an hour away, go on a school trip. And then eventually she did go on a school trip out of state, which was very exciting. So, I wanted to show you. So, let me show you a different one. So what we do is we give a sticker on one side for the first time that they do the exposure. And then we do a second sticker once they've like really habituated and it's become completely comfortable for them to do that. So this person I showed you only had stars on one. She actually replicated her letter on they took a picture and printed out, and that's the copy that we put the stars on. Okay, so now in terms of parents, I really do only work with warm and loving parents. And by accommodating the anxiety, they're, of course, unintentionally strengthening it. It's one of the hardest things for parents to do, to actually push their child outside of the child's comfort zone. This comes up a lot, when we're training our kids to fall asleep. For some parents, they're really able to tolerate the distress of their child, crying, and then they go in and those early years of sleep training, if people do it, even though the research shows that family co-sleeping has no negative effects for the kid, for most people, their value is that they sleep alone. Like, I don't have a good sleep as much as I love the cuddling when my kids are in my bed because I can't sleep well. So if I had kids who wouldn't sleep alone, it would become a big problem. So tolerating the distress level of the child when they're facing their fears is something parents have to do, because if we can't tolerate the distress, how could we expect our child to? So a lot of times parents, again, out of love and out of concern for their child who's so distressed, end up facilitating avoidance, and that just strengthens the anxiety, and the child really misses the opportunity to learn how to become resilient. So we can only really learn that through overcoming obstacles. And providing the reassurance it's a problem, because it doesn't help the anxiety, it actually makes it worse and invalidates the anxiety. So if going back to the girl with this fear of weather, if I said, listen, it's good news, it's only going to rain on Friday, the rest of the week it's going to be sunny. Okay, I'm actually reinforcing the idea that rain is scary, or that bad things can happen when it rains. And instead I have to say, you know what? Our environment rains and storms and has wind and has sunny days and has beautiful days and yucky days. And that's just what life is. And we have to find a way to adapt and be okay with a variety of weathers. Okay, I pretty much said that. Oh, and authoritative parenting, so I think like in 1969, Diane Baumround came up with 4 parenting styles: uninvolved, permissive, authoritative, which is the best one, and authoritarian, each defined by their levels of warmth and demand. And so like the uninvolved parent doesn't have any warmth, doesn't have any demand. The permissive parent has a high amount of warmth. I see how hard this is for you, honey. And a low demand. Don't worry, you don't have to go. And oftentimes we get a permissive parent in response to an anxious child. Authoritative, the best one, high warmth, high demand. I see how hard this is for you, honey. We can't miss it. We have to find a way to get you there, and we're going to do it. Authoritarian, which is not great, is low demand and high warmth. Low warmth and high demand. I don't really give a crap that it's hard for you. You're going to go anyway, right? And so a lot of times you get a permissive parent and an authoritarian parent, And then you get to tell them that they actually both have to change and go to be an authoritative parent. So the authoritarian parent needs to become warmer, and the permissive parent needs to have more demands. So we want to just keep that in mind. Okay, and where am I on time? Not nervous. Okay, so these are some good things that you can say in response to your child's anxiety. So we don't want you to not be engaged. We don't want you to say like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk to your anxiety. You know, well, you can say that as long as then you say, but how can I be of support to you? But basically you want to cue them to face their fears. I see how hard this is for you. I really know you can talk back to the anxiety. What could you say? I see you're scared, but remember, this is your chance to practice being brave. You can only practice being brave when you're scared. Let me help you. Let's walk through the steps. You know, even though it might not feel like it, you can handle this. So you're talking and you're engaging, but it's around the whole premise of, I'm helping you face your fears. I believe in you. I know you can do it. I know you've done this before. I know other people have done this before, and that you're going to be okay. So they really do need to hear that. This is an example of a boy who came, the mom was so perfect. I said, you have to let me take pictures of your phone. And she said, please do. I'm the role model now, because she was not the role model when I first spoke to her, because she said, in my first conversation, I'm not allowed to go out. I said, you're not allowed to go out? She says, I'm not allowed to go out by myself. I said, oh, okay. She's like, I'm not allowed to go to dinner with my friends. I'm not allowed to leave at night. Oh, okay. So anyway, we created this ladder. She and the dad were out, and the boy was very upset because he was now at the point in his ladder where he needed to fall asleep before his parents came home. He used to wait up for them at a lower step on the ladder. Parents go out, but you can stay up until they get home, because the part that was really scary for him was going to sleep when his parents weren't at home. So the boy writes, that was lower on my ladder, and Bonnie Zucker said to go from lowest to highest. And the last time I slept in the bed, so can we stay up until you come home? And you said you don't want to stay out so late, you know, kind of anyway. And another time when you want to stay out late, you could see all the bargaining, right, and negotiating. So another time when you want to stay up late, we can go to sleep earlier, because it's he and his sibling. And it can be after staying up until you come home on the ladder. And then she writes back, no, which was just perfect. He says, but Bonnie said we could do that. And then she writes an encouraging statement. You can do this. And he says, Bonnie said lowest to highest on the ladder. And I might sleep before you come home anyways. Bonnie said to stay up before going to sleep. And she said, no, you did that already. He had done that 3 times, by the way. No, you did that already, but I slept before and you came home. Use the tips, another cue. I'll be home soon. And actually, she was not coming home soon at all. They were on their way to a movie. And you said you're coming home early at around 10. What time will you go home? I'm leaving soon in 5 minutes. What time will you come home? I'm jumping ahead of the ladder instead of going step by step. Sorry, I can't talk right now, which cracks me up because that's one of those automated messages that you don't even type in your message. You just press. Why? Why not? We get to stay up until you come home because we need to follow Bonnie Zucker's instructions, or there's no point in spending money for Bonnie Zucker. I mean Zucker, I didn't misspell my name. You're wasting money on Bonnie Zucker. Call me, please, 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 please. And she writes, we are in the movie, no reception here. Love you, you can do it. Follow the suggestions and have fun. And he writes back, okay. And she writes, this is my last text. So he did end up falling asleep. It went very well. They then repeated that several times. And he learned, it's okay for my parents to go out and it's okay for me to fall asleep when they're out. But you could see the pushback and the mom, how easy it would have been to be like, oh, you know what? I mean, she's out. She's getting these anxious texts from her son. It's very easy to say, okay, this is obviously too hard for you. Don't worry, just stay up. But we've done that. And she knows I have to push him, because if I don't push him, he's not going to push himself. If I don't tell him he can do this, he's not going to know he can do it. So accommodating makes the anxiety worse, challenging the anxiety as an authoritative parent. And she was warm. I love you. You can do this. High demand. You can do this, you know, you've got to do it. And I'm in the movie. I'm not going to keep responding to you. That makes the anxiety better. A good way of thinking about this. So babies are really externally motivated. They do things to elicit a response from parents. They start to walk, and the parents are like, oh, yay! And then they realize they're getting this positive response, and then they, stand up again and do it again. Adults are supposed to be, at least, right, internally motivated. And the goal of parenting is we have to slowly pull back and let our children make their own decisions, even if they fail, and give children responsibility and give them the chance to figure it out on their own. And this is actually a part of really helping kids who have anxiety, because they're likely to lean in a little bit more to parents. And we want to provide emotional support, but we also want to provide, the validation that they actually can make decisions for themselves. This comes up sometimes when there's challenges with school or social. So if your child has a low grade or is socially rejected, it's your opportunity to teach them how to deal with failure and disappointment and pain. So I have a rule that once your child is basically like in kindergarten or first grade, that you're not supposed to ever contact the parents of a child that is mistreating your child. And I'm not talking about real bullying where they're being physically hurt and stuff like that, but over and over, I have parents say, don't you think we should call these parents to let them know what they're doing to my child? And I say, oh, I would love to do that, but we can't do that, because it's not teaching your child how to actually deal with social power dynamics, not teaching your child how to be prepared to handle obstacles that are going to come up. And I understand that not every kid is as nice as your kid. There are kids who say mean things, and they're going to be on the recess field or during lunch or at play dates when parents and teachers are not around. So we teach kids to problem solve and to be assertive and stick up for themselves. We don't do it for them. And maintaining the attachment is key. And I'm sure Bill and Ned will talk about this, but one-on-one time with your child is invaluable. I actually have breakfast every Thursday morning with my son since he's in kindergarten. He's in 7th grade now. And so many times he said to me, I can't wait till Thursday, so I'm going to tell you, something. I'm like, okay, great. And then with my younger son, I have breakfast with him on Fridays. And it's since kindergarten, and he's now in 3rd grade, and it's very consistent. And if I can't make it, I reschedule it for a different time in the week. But that connection when your child's going through a rough time is absolutely essential. And handling failure, we have to handle failure. It's a natural part of life. It's not something to be afraid of. When your child scores poorly on something, the question is the answer should not be how it makes you feel. It should be, how does it make your child feel? So instead of saying, I'm really disappointed, you could have done better than this, we want instead to say, so what was it like for you when you got that 68 back? And really like get them to to have an open conversation with you about what they can do, because kids don't like getting 68s. They don't like getting Ds. So we're helping them, and we're giving the right messages too, that success is not necessarily about all A's. Who your child is and not just what they do is going to be a far better predictor of their success. Kids who are overscheduled are not always creative, and creativity is really important. And it's bad enough that we have all these screens. I love my phone, but I'm so glad I did not grow up with it, because it's making kids really less creative, because the creativity is done for them in the screen that they're on, which is why we need to be careful about how much they're on screens. And also, when you're on screens, you're not in nature. And we know that there are parts of your brain that are not developed if you're not in nature. So we have to get out in nature. And then perfectionism, which I actually wrote a book on perfectionism, and it'll come out next in the I think February. It's actually a disadvantage. I learned quite a bit about perfectionism working on this book, but it's truly a disadvantage, not an advantage. There's a lot of self-criticism when you have perfectionism. It's also the research on perfectionism, it leads to anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and suicide. And the goal is to do these behavioral exposures that challenge the perfectionism, and challenge the thinking patterns, and also to make sure the child learns to have more self-compassion. So practices that challenge the perfectionism, for example, are making a mistake on purpose, on soccer, missing a goal on purpose. Very hard to convince kids to do it, but they do it. Asking a question that you already know, saying the wrong answer in class, all of those things that are challenging the perfectionism actually show kids it's okay, and then they report back, I'm less anxious about making mistakes. I just don't worry about it as much. And I'm like, great. And that's because we've actually made the mistakes that they were so afraid of making. This sort of goes back to what I was saying about the news. So we really need to talk less about the news. Again, I love screens and technology, but there's so much access. My son, who found out, got TikTok when he was like 11 during the pandemic. And I got TikTok too, not realizing just how much exposure you can get. But, you know, that's how he found out about September 11th. You know, he comes to me crying. He's like, did you know these 2 buildings that planes fell? I'm like, oh my God, how did you find out? And of course, want him to know historically that this happened, but really wasn't ready because he hadn't learned it yet in school. And frankly, it was in the beginning of COVID, which was just not a good time to hear about other horrible things. And I was like, oh, this social media is bringing in information. And now we're just at a point where he gets exposed to things before me. And he'll come up and say, did you hear what happened to Kobe Bryant? Like, what happened to Kobe Bryant? Because it's instantaneous and the kids text each other and everything. So we have to say, there's like no phone Friday, or you really need this phone to be turned off at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. What I do is I try to let kids do a quick check of text messages or snaps right before bed to just answer them. But for the hour and a half or so before that, there's no screens. We're really trying to unplug. We're really trying to minimize the conversation. And we know from research that when you focus on positivity and you focus on gratitude, it serves everyone well. And we really need to integrate those practices into our homes. Okay, so when we think about self-care, there's and by the way, sorry to go back, for the perfectionism on self-compassion, I forgot to mention that. There's a book that I recommend at the end called Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff. And let me just see if I did. Okay, good. Sorry. Never mind. We're going to go back to that. Okay. So self-care, it's sleep, nutrition, exercise, and relaxation. And when kids are doing this, when they're getting enough sleep, they're getting proper nutrition. I give my kids, last night I gave them cabbage and eggs and Brussels sprouts and said, when you eat this, then you can have gnocchi. And they did eat all of that. And then they had a little gnocchi. Because we have to teach them, you have to get the good nutrition. Gnocchi's fine, but it doesn't have any nutrition in it. You have to put the good nutrition in. And when you make this a habit, they do it. It was delicious, you know, and onions too, eggs and onions and cabbage. But you're teaching them healthy habits. And sometimes we have really unhealthy food too, but nobody feels that great after. So we have to teach them to have good nutrition and get that hour of exercise in a day, and then carve that time for relaxation. Oh, and also, like for us adults, if we get stressed out about an hour of exercise a day, just do 20 minutes. You know, do a 20-minute like bike ride or 20-minute walk. Start out small, but really make it attainable. Everyone has more resources after they exercise. So I had already mentioned this internal and external locus of control, but I just want to reiterate it since it's so essential. So internal locus of control is when you believe and you see a situation and you say, there's something I can do to change the situation or my experience of it. External locus of control is, it doesn't matter what I do, nothing can be changed here. And I've had kids say to me, I have no friends at school and there's nothing I can do. My whole class is cliques and you can't get into any cliques. And I say, okay, well, let's come up with some strategies. So we really work on developing, what can we do? What can I do? As opposed to, there's nothing I can do. What can I do? So setting up for depression, external locus of control sets you up for depression. And this is where the strategies and the right attitude comes in. So what can I do differently? What can I change? How can I change? So the girl that had no friends, we ended up changing the situation because she did have a friend drive home with her every other week. And when they were driving home, she said, I've really been wanting to ice skate, you know, how about we go for like half hour? And the girl was like, sure. And the two of them went ice skating. And then they did it again the next week. And then they did it again and had dinner together the following week. And then the week after that, she started sitting with her and her friends at school. And it came from one question, you want to ice skate for 30 minutes, which the girl had not thought of. She never thought that that can be a social event driving home. So you're always prompting kids, let's take a step back and let's see what you can do differently. And also, of course, seeing that you have choices and, being flexible, this is all really a part of it. And then here I recommend Bill Stixrud's and Ned Johnson's book, Self-Driven Child, which they do talk quite a bit about how when you have lower levels of stress, you have a better functioning prefrontal cortex. So all the good work that Debbie Rosen does on teaching people how to have excellent organization and executive functioning skills, that requires, your prefrontal cortex to not be impacted by all the negative stress. So we get better reasoning, clearer thinking. We also get more creative thinking, by the way, and organized thinking when our prefrontal cortex is not affected by stress. So self-compassion. So Kristen Neff is the expert on self-compassion. She has a self-compassion lab in Texas. The research shows when you look at goal attainment, so someone trying to reach their goal, that if they have self-compassion, they're more likely to reach their goal than if they have self-criticism. So it's basically supporting yourself, not beating up on yourself. So if I have a goal to exercise and I look at my week and I didn't exercise but one day, and I say to myself, what is wrong with you? You could only exercise one day this week. You have no values. Okay, that's self-criticism. Or you say, okay, you did it once this week. If you did it once this week, that means next week you can do it 3 times. Something like that, really supporting yourself. And we want kids to have this language. And we also don't want to pathologize failure. We want to recognize that failure is part of being success and successful. Self-compassion has 3 parts. Self-kindness, which is it's okay, it's all right, it was a rough day, we all have a rough day. Mindfulness, let's be aware of the challenging situation we're in, the pain associated with it. We're not trying to change it, we're just acknowledging this is tough, period. And common humanity, which is like everybody has a rough patch from time to time. Everybody struggles with something. Everybody's anxious about something. I'm not alone in this. Everyone has had some challenge as well. So that's all a part of self-compassion. And you say to your child, how would you respond to a best friend if they were struggling or having an issue? And you want to be kind and loving and supportive and encouraging and sensitive and understanding. All of those things goes a very long way. And also, as does nurturing oneself. And I mentioned this mindfulness, it's being aware without judgment, really. And I was just going to add that with the common humanity, like through COVID, now more than ever, this is really evident that, the pandemic was challenging in some way for everybody. And there's a big range of how horrible it was for some people, and other people who even thrived in the pandemic still had some negative impact. So at minimum, people are missing things. And the other side, they're grieving. The last thing I'll mention again is just one more, one-on-one time, nothing like it. Be a positive mirror, reflect back positively your child, even when they do bad things. You say, well, you're good. You just made a mistake, right? Like we all make mistakes. It's oftentimes our parents' voice that we have in our head when we're a child. So we want those messages to be positive. And we really, really want to validate. There's a great book called The Power of Validation. I forgot to include it in the slide, but it's called The Power of Validation. And it's just so essential when kids feel understood and they feel heard and they feel known, like they're 50% lighter just from that. So we don't actually have to help them as much. We need to understand them more. And again, believing in your child no matter what is essential. And I'm so happy because it's 9:59 and I wasn't sure if I could do it. But I just want to very quickly, Power of Validation. I'm going to just grab that book to tell you the author. Just because it's so good, I should have included it. And it's by Karen Hall and Melissa Cook, The Power of Validation, Arming Your Child Against Bullying, Peer Pressure, Addiction, Self-Harm. It's just another book I should have put on the list there. So anyway, thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for having me. I hope I didn't talk too fast. But
you were amazing. Dr. Zucker, you're amazing. And We really are grateful. We know that you have a patient at 10 a.m., so we are going to let you go and thank everybody again for coming. And we are so grateful for everything. I was cutting and pasting slides and sending them to my son while you were talking.
Oh, I love that. I love that. My puppy's been scratching at the door, so she just got in.
Yeah. Great.
Yes, there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
You
We
so
appreciate
much.
everybody. And
Thank
this will be
you.
recorded. This is recorded, and we will send the link out this afternoon with the slides and the handout link again.
Perfect. Thank you. I hope you all have a great
so
day
much.
and good night to the UK people soon. So,
Okay.
Oh, it's only 4 o'clock. Never mind. Good afternoon. Okay.
Thank you so much. All the thank yous are rolling in. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you so much. Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
Have a great
Okay.
day. Right. And good afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.